If you wait on cash payments to come out of reparations, you're going to wait forever. It's not going to happen.
But when it comes to Native Americans getting land, he's stepping up to testify on their behalf.
Madam Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much for yielding me the time. I promise you I won't use the 5 minutes. I'll leave that for somebody else. Madam Speaker, I rise today to call upon this august body for a favorable vote on H.R. 1619. That's a very interesting number for this legislation.
The Biden administration and the Democratic Party as a whole has bent over backwards this year to ensure that the Native American community has everything they need to attain a better and more prosperous future in America. It started out with the Biden administration and the Democrats locking in $31 billion for the Native American community, and then it continued on with Joe Biden signing a criminal justice reform executive order for the natives while the George Floyd bill is collecting dust. And now, Jim Clyburn is breaking his back to ensure that the natives get all of the land that they're entitled to through passing the Catawaba Nation Act. Meanwhile, you can't point to me one piece of legislation that benefits the black community exclusively in the same way that the natives and all other groups have received theirs. Now, about 2 weeks ago, there was a hearing for the Catawaba Nation Act. And what I want to do is play some of what Representative Teresa Leger Fernandez had to say, because her testimony highlights how long the federal government has been attempting to make amends with the past concerning Native Americans. And it also highlights how much more support they will be receiving in the future.
You know, today is the first day of the month that is dedicated to Native American heritage. As we all know, the United States' historic treatment of our indigenous governments and peoples is fraught with genocide, displacement, termination, and attempts to eliminate Native American culture, language, and identity. But as a nation, we have also taken actions to remedy that, to build back from that sad history. In 1934, Congress recognized that termination was the wrong policy and passed the Indian Reorganization Act, which recognized tribal governments and placed most remaining tribal land into trust. In 1975, we passed the Indian Self-Determination Act, which allowed tribes to reassert their sovereignty and jurisdiction over their own lands and programs intended to benefit them. But the work is far from done. Through bipartisan legislation we are debating today and many other legislative initiatives we will undertake this 117th Congress, we are furthering tribal recognition and reacquisition of tribal homelands. We are strengthening the consultation requirements to provide better health care to the 70% of Native Americans living in urban areas. In the Infrastructure Bill and Build Back Better Act, we will have historic levels of funding for programs that meet the trust responsibilities owed to Native Americans, promised to them as the United States entered into treaties and took over their historic lands.
So let me get this straight if I heard correctly. In Joe Biden's Build Back Better Act, the Native American community will receive historic levels of funding? That's interesting.
I'm meeting. Especially those moments, and especially those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb, the African-American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
He lied. Y'all niggas worship him. Nobody wants to tell the truth.
Now here's my thing. Where is all of that, hey, this is unconstitutional energy at, like folks have for the descendants of American slavery when we start talking about reparations? Where is all that? What about the immigrants that came to this country after the fact? They didn't oppress you. Why should they have to pay for this? Isn't it interesting how that energy is only reserved for the descendants of American slavery? the reason those bogus talking points stick is because Black Americans, and to be more specific, the descendants of American slavery, don't have any actual political representation because they're too busy fighting to make sure that every other group gets what they need at the expense of you.
With that, I'll turn to H.R. 1619, the Catawba Nation Act, introduced by Representative Clyburn of South Carolina. It will ratify and confirm the Department of the Interior's decision to take into trust 17 acres of land in Cleveland County, North Carolina, for the benefit of the Catawba Indian Nation. The legislation will provide much-needed economic development opportunities to the nation and the surrounding local communities. I want to thank Mr. Clyburn for championing this bipartisan legislation, and I urge its quick adoption.
Jim Clyburn literally represents the most impoverished district in his state. Black Americans are hurting in his district. Yet he's out here introducing bills to secure a future for Native Americans while actively opposing reparations.
If you wait on cash payments to come out of reparations, you're going to wait forever. It's not going to happen. So what you got to do, let me talk. Don't put that in my face.
Why are you touching me?
Okay, all right. I'm going to leave you alone.
Cut the check. Tell Nancy Pelosi to cut the check.
Yeah.
You do that for me?
She's the treasurer.
Cut the check. Somebody better cut the check.
Well,
reparations are owed, sir.
You talk to the
ADOS. You're not going to run away from this issue, Congressman.
Oh, I'm not trying to run away from it.
It seems like you are. You're walking away right now.
Oh.
If you pay attention, there's a pattern when it comes to Jim Clyburn and reparations. Anytime you address reparations with him, he becomes visibly agitated and condescending.
50-50. There's 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans.
So do you want to pass reparations for ADOS or no?
Sorry?
Do you want to pass reparations for ADOS or not?
I want to pass it for my wife and her descendants.
Are they ADOS?
I have no idea what that is.
American descendants of slavery.
Look at me. Look at my daughter.
I know who you are.
Okay. So she's a descendant of slavery.
Okay. So you do want to pass reparations for ADOS?
I'm not going to argue with you now. I've already answered your question. I've already answered your question.
Is that a yes or no?
Now really take this in concerning the first video that I played for you of Jim Clyburn. He literally told you, forget about reparations. That's not happening, especially if you want cash payments.
If you wait on cash payments to come out of reparations, you're going to wait forever. It's not going to happen.
Yet he's sponsoring bills to make sure that other groups will have a prosperous future in this country. Now, I want you to pay close attention because I'm showing you this bill for a reason. If you look at where it says sponsor, and you'll see the first name here is Representative Clyburn James E. Now, what does that mean for you to see his name right there at the top, where in parentheses it says introduced? A sponsor or patron is a person, usually a legislator, who presents a bill or resolution for consideration. Those who support it are known as co-sponsors or co-patrons. A sponsor in the United States Congress is the first member of the House or Senate to be listed among the potentially numerous lawmakers who introduce a bill for consideration. Now, after reading this and then coming back to the Catawaba Nation Act, when you see Jim Clyburn's name sitting right there at the very top where it says sponsor, that tells you that out of everyone in Congress, he was the first one to sign his name on this bill to approve it and say, we got to get this passed. Yet when it comes to reparations,
if you wait on cash payments to come out of reparations, you're going to wait forever. It's not going to happen.
But when it comes to Native Americans getting land, he's stepping up to testify on their behalf.
Madam Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much for yielding me the time. I promise you I won't use the 5 minutes. I'll leave that for somebody else. Madam Speaker, I rise today to call upon this august body for a favorable vote on H.R. 1619. That's a very interesting number for this legislation. This legislation known as the Catawba Indian Nation Lands Act. The Catawba Indian Nation Lands Act clarifies that the Catawba Indian Nation is subject to the well-established rules and regulations of the Indian Game and Regulatory Act on their modern and ancestral lands in the state of North Carolina. This legislation will clarify the tribe's 1993 Land Claims Settlement Act and reaffirm recent action taken by the Department of Interior to take land into trust for the tribe. Most importantly, this bipartisan legislation is a very significant step towards rectifying historic injustices that have been perpetrated against the Catawba Indian Nation. Like in many other instances of current effects of historical inequities, the Catawba Nation experiences high unemployment and poverty rates, causing many of its citizens to rely upon federal and state governments for basic social service. The enactment of this legislation is critical to helping the Catawba Indian Nation secure economic self-sufficiency as Congress originally intended when it passed the Indian Game and Regulatory Act of 1988. I respectfully ask my colleagues for a favorable vote on this act, and I yield back the rest of my time.
I want to take a quick moment to read a tweet that I posted a few days ago on Jim Clyburn. I don't think we truly understand how dangerous Jim Clyburn actually is concerning his consistency in undermining legislation that would elevate and or protect Black America while simultaneously breaking his back to prioritize other groups over his own people. What you have to understand, brothers and sisters, is that as a whole, the Congressional Black Caucus is essentially one giant snake. But the head of that snake is Jim Clyburn. Now, I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm getting ready to say here, so let me choose my words wisely. Come election time, we must make it a point to cut the head of the snake off politically via our votes at the voting booth. Okay? We need to politically, in the voting booth, cut that head smooth off via our votes, that is. If not, this man will continue to lead the charge in burying his own people. And with all that being said, that does it for today's video. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. All social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. Please make sure you text tdhiphop to number 33222. That's tdhiphop to number 33222. That way you'll get a direct text notification whenever I release a new video, but it also serves as a protection plan for myself in case YouTube ever gives this channel the axe. I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. And last but not least, for those of you who have a love and appreciation for the work that I put in on this channel, the number one way you can show your support is through Patreon. For only $3 a month, that will help put me in position to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And for those who have issues with joining Patreon, you could also hit the join button that's next to the subscribe button, and that way you can become an official channel member for as little as $3 a month as well. And lastly, if you have not already, please make sure you join the emailing list. There is no way that I can go independent of YouTube if I cannot take the audience with me. And the link to that will be pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you for your time, and until the next video, peace.